There's no doubt that losing any kind of life can be difficult for any type, and it's no different for the INFJ. In fact, with a deep introspective outlook on life and what it all means, death and other forms of loss can send the INFJ down a rabbit hole of questioning a new angle of existence that provides no answers. Welcome back, Psychos. Today, we're going to be talking about the complex INFJ grieving process. But before we start, have you liked and subscribed to our channel? Go ahead, it'll only take a second. Alright, let's get back into it, starting with number 1, a new level of introspection. Of course, every INFJ grieving experience is different, depending on things like the type of loss, the relationship of the individual, and even past experience. But one thing that's for sure is that with every INFJ loss comes a host of introspective questions and wonders that ultimately never get answered. Like most life events the INFJ experiences, they will usually withdraw from the people around them for a while in order to try and properly understand their emotions and the implications of what's happening from all angles. They need to collect the pieces of the puzzle in order to properly decipher the meaning of it all, especially when it comes to the death of a loved one. The INFJ can experience a whole new degree of analysing the meaning of life and wondering what happens after this thing we call life. Luckily, because of this, INFJs usually come out of difficult situations with newly found deep insights and understandings that most people completely overlook. Number 2, self-blame. INFJs are used to being hard on themselves, but when it comes to the significant losses in life, sometimes they can't help but use that same self-blame tactic in an attempt to find reasoning. Of course, with grieving introspection comes the questions of how it happened, why it happened, and what could have been done to avoid it. And with these questions, INFJs may turn to themselves and wonder how they could have helped, or what they can do if something similar happened again. They want to understand all angles of their contribution or lack of in order to feel comfortable enough to let it go without guilt or hard feelings attached. Self-blame is not unique to the INFJ grieving process, but it can be the most difficult aspect to get over depending on the situation. In fact, INFJs don't accept the concept of moving on until they can fully see that they are not to blame for what has happened. Number 3, they freeze, but eventually let it all out. Call it denial or call it shock. Sometimes the highly empathetic INFJ just can't quite grasp the idea of loss when it comes knocking at their door. Now, it's not to say that there isn't a common step in most grieving processes, but sometimes for the INFJ type, they won't process it until everyone else around them has had a chance to. Although losing someone or something can be quite the crippling experience for the INFJ, they can put their grief on the back burner for as long as necessary, especially if moves need to be made where a clear and level head is needed. However, once the busyness of loss is over, the buried grief comes creeping up, looking to be resolved and understood. And that's when it can all come pouring down. The best part about it all, sometimes there's no warning, even surprising the INFJ themselves at times of least expectancy. Number 4, they help others cope as a coping mechanism. When INFJs put their grief on the back burner, they may actually use the chaos and sorrow around them to distract themselves from their own emotions. Naturally, their empathetic nature makes it easy for them to remain concerned for how other people are handling their grief. They can become hyper-focused on ensuring everyone's emotions are supported, lending an open ear or a shoulder to cry on whenever needed. However, the downfall of this coping mechanism is that they can get so caught up in absorbing and experiencing everyone else's pain that they lose sight of processing their own feelings. In fact, sometimes INFJs never really get around to processing their own feelings because they think that by fully understanding everyone else's, that they can better manage the situation. Yet grief doesn't stay quiet. Everyone has to deal with it eventually. Number 5, Over Indulgence. So, what happens when INFJs prolong this process of burying their grief and emotions? impulsivity, and overindulgence. Unsupported grief can temporarily change the INFJ personality type, leading them away from their naturally controlled and creative selves and more towards recklessness and unpredictable behavior. Slowly but surely, grief begins to affect the INFJ's introverted intuition, their main guiding system, ultimately leading them astray. Well, actually, they're not fully led astray. In fact, this process causes the INFJ to resort to their inferior extroverted sensing function, which explains their short-sighted tendencies. Depending on the INFJ and the situation, some INFJs may act out by overeating, over-exercising, impulsive cleaning, overspending, excessive drinking, and the list goes on. Since most INFJs have difficulty really knowing how they feel most of the time, this overindulgent and out-of-character behavior is known to be one of the INFJ's main indicators that there may be some underlying stress that needs to be resolved. Number 6. Utter distraction. If you've ever experienced grief for yourself, no matter what personality type you identify with, you know how distracting it can be, even for the types that don't spend the majority of their waking hours in their minds. For the INFJ, who does in fact spend most of their waking hours in their own minds, grief can come with a whole new level of distraction that most INFJs never knew was even possible. In fact, significant loss is one of the only things that has the power to send the perfectionistic INFJ into a seriously unproductive state. They may feel immobilized or trapped without a clear focus or direction of where to put their time or energy. This is usually when overindulging and impulsivity creeps its way in, because without focus and drive, the INFJ just doesn't know what to do with themselves. This alone causes even more stress for them because of the lack of organization and control they feel in their lives. Number 7. Hypersensory awareness and obsessing over the details. Speaking of distracting grief, sometimes it's not about what's going on inside an INFJ's head, but what they do to avoid what's going on in their minds. Contrary to some INFJ experiencing a complete checkout of physical reality because of their inner distractions, some INFJs become hyper-focused on their outer environment. They can become overly fixated on minor details of every task they complete, and may even get aggravated or snappy should something not go as planned. This is a tactic to gain back a sense of control and avoid the uncontrollable aspects of a grieving situation. On the other hand, since INFJs are known for being so sensitive to outer stimuli, this sensory awareness can become even more heightened, to the point of not being able to comfortably function in day-to-day life. Light, sounds, smells, and energy can become even more intense, basically making the INFJ feel crazy and unable to keep up with their responsibilities. And number 8, they avoid burdening others. Most people look to the people around them during times of grief for mourning connections and emotional support. But for the INFJ personality type, they're not so quick to run to others in times of loss and grief. Considering one of the more well-known traits of the INFJ is their reluctance to open up to others, it doesn't come as a surprise to know that they may never open up about their grief, even to the people that mean the most to them. Of course, they'll always be there to help others grieve, but it's rarely a mutual contributing conversation. Even when an INFJ takes their much-needed alone time to decipher through their thoughts in order to feel comfortable enough to talk about their feelings to a loved one, they may not even know where to start and how to put their feelings into words. And if they do get a few points out, most INFJs can end up feeling ashamed and regret for letting someone into their inner thought process. Yet, in reality, venting to someone trustworthy can actually make all the difference for a grieving INFJ. Well, that's it for today, Psychos. So, are you an INFJ personality type? And if so, how do you naturally grieve a loss? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave us a like, share this video with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel for more Psycho videos.